It is May 20th, 2024, and this is the City Commission meeting. Could we have the roll call, please?
Smith.
Here.
Weinreich.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Robish.
Aye, here. Let's join for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we approve the agenda tonight, I would like to add under bid quote items, 7.1, change order for downtown project, and 7.2, request to go to bid for the street salt shed. And also, I would like to remove 9.1 on the ordinances and resolution. Do I have a motion to accept the,
Mr. Mayor, could we also
yes.
amend the work session entitled to trunk line fees and downtown water lines?
absolutely.
Thank you. I would move to approve as amended.
Okay, second? Second by Commissioner Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Public forum. Public forum is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and address for the record. Please, is there anyone here that would like to speak on public forum? Yes.
Bush Fullerton, Huron resident, representing Potter Shoes at 316 Dakota Avenue South. I've got 3 minutes, I don't think I'll take it.
That's
But
fine.
initially, first things, we got the project going. I think everybody's excited to see the end result and tighten up the belt in the short term to gain the long-term value. We've been talking about it for a few years now, and that's all good. You know, each of us have been able to, as business owners, make our own personal decisions as to how we want to improve. And there's been an enhancement there with the Greater Huron on grants, all good. This morning, I was a little bit, I've got some hair going straight back on my back of my neck, because I got a bid proposal for sewer hookup from the project to where we connect.
Mhm.
And I think everybody got it. And it's sticker shock. We've been planning ahead for 2 years for everything else. And maybe I missed the meeting where this was discussed, that's possible. But it seems like a blindside, and everybody's getting you can sign a contract this week with the construction company on the project out here for either $9,300 or $9,800 payable 10 days from the time the work is done, and you need to do it this week. So to me, it's like, it's sight unseen. Why weren't we talking about this earlier? Just asking, because maybe that pipe is good. Then if I sign this thing for $9,800 and the pipe's good, it's like, dang, I just blew $9,800 and I had to finance it.
Yeah.
Or I can wait till they come, they say it's fine, we all go whew, like that, I'm out there while they're digging, hope they don't break anything.
Mhm.
Or it's a problem, and I go, I gotta make a decision on the spot. It won't be $9,300, it won't be $9,800, it'll be a lot more. But what do? It's a gamble. I just think it's something that we should have been discussing with all the collaboration with the city and the Huron in the last 3 years. And to my knowledge, again, I might have missed the meeting, but I didn't see any of this come until this morning.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Fullerton. I'll just talk a little bit about that. I'm not sure what all your fees were there that you got on your, because I haven't seen your email or whatever, but I know we've been talking about putting new water mains in Dakota. That's part of the project. The sewer part I'm not sure about, but that's what Mr. Bragg was alluding to, I believe, right? We're gonna discuss that.
Okay, good.
So I don't know.
I have to leave before you do all that, but maybe someone else will be there to listen.
Okay,
It's possible.
I wasn't in on a lot of that discussion either, so I would say we'll pick that up here after on our work session, so thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Anyone else for public forum? Seeing none, the city commission adjourns now to convene as the Board of Adjustments for the following public hearings. 4.1, consider conditional use permit request filed by Buell Consulting, doing business as Verizon Wireless. Project address 360 Jersey Avenue Northeast, to construct a cell tower including a compound for ground equipment where code requires conditional use permit for public utility structures in an area zoned R4. I'm gonna turn this over to the city planner, Barry Cranston.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, we do have Blair Ransom on the phone with us in case there are any questions by the commissioners. I have this up on the screen up above, and this shows the approximate location of where the compound would be. The compound will include one small building and a large monopole, and the planning or the hearing examiner did hear this and recommended approval, as did myself and the building official, with the condition. And I know that Chad Schroeder is in the audience, and he would like the condition to be added that opaque fencing of a mutually agreeable material, chain link fencing being excluded, color matched as near as practical using the City of Huron's Parks and Recs Sherwin-Williams paint code, using commercially reasonable efforts with the existing fence that encompasses Memorial Baseball Park at the property. And I'll submit this for Paul Lynn to include in the minutes. So they would like, for Blair's benefit, the commissioner in charge of the Parks and Rec Department does feel that this should be included as a condition for consideration for approval. With that, I'd take any questions.
Mr. Mayor, could I move to approve this conditional use permit for discussion?
Absolutely. Do I need a second? Second by Commissioner Weinreich. Now, we can have discussion.
So, just to follow up on that language is in the lease agreement with Verizon, and that was part of our conversation from the very get-go, that we have that green fencing that's out there at the baseball complex, and the understanding was always that they would match that same type of fencing around there. But just for clarification, both Chad and Blair have said it would make sense to also put it in the conditional use permit as a condition. But that has been part of what has been discussed with this project from the beginning.
All right.
And one more follow-up, because Mark, I know you weren't here for some of this. This location, they gave us a very small range of where they could put it on city property. This was absolutely as far away from the lake and other recreation areas that would be impacted. And this area was also selected because if you go out on site, there are quite a few telephone poles, electrical poles. That's where the air raid siren for that part of town. There is already a lot of height there. This obviously will be higher yet, but this area we felt would be the least amount of impact that out of all the possible areas that Verizon was willing to accept.
Sure. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Again, we have Blair on
Ritz
the phone with us here, if there's any questions for him. Commissioner Smith?
Chad, you and I had that conversation regarding the use of this area, having to do with our land grant. Has that been straightened out?
Conservation Fund? Yeah, so that we're talking about, we're still waiting to hear back from the National Park Service on the conversion of use. There's a possibility that we would have to do a conversion of use to a different park in the area. Well, to add additional parks onto some of the, well, we're talking about the South Water Tower. That is a possibility. We're waiting, there's some new guidance at the National Park Service stating that because this is a leased area, we might not have to do the conversion of use. So I've been working with Randy Kittle from LWCF, he's put another email into the National Park Service to see how that's gonna go. What we're doing is we're actually approving the conditional use permit, but we are not, I have not brought the lease forward to you yet. We've set a public hearing to do that, hoping that we can get that information before we bring the lease approval by the commission, bring that to you.
So, best case scenario is that they allow it because it's a lease and not an ownership
That is correct,
designation.
without needing to do the conversion of use. Worst case scenario, we'll have to take 0.13 acres of ground somewhere and convert it over to a park, because that's what we're using up as 0.13 acres for this lease.
And that's not so much of a problem, it's that in order to meet the federal guidelines, we need to hire basically a survey, for lack of a better word, that only certain, we can't just use a local surveyor, we have to get certain federally approved guidelines for it, so that's where the cost would come in if we have to do it. So we're hopeful, that's why initially when we first talked about this, we were gonna put both the conditional use and the lease agreement up right away for consideration, partly because the lease requires that public notice, and partly because we don't have the answer back on that piece. We decided to move forward with just the conditional use at this time. So it still gives us a chance later. We're not locked into the lease yet until we potentially get that answer or have more information.
Should that be part of the conditions? In some form? For the permit?
I mean, we certainly could. The problem is because we may decide to still go ahead with it if we have to do the conversion or not, depending on what that costs and what we hear back. I would feel comfortable personally, because the lease still, we haven't signed a lease yet or entered into a lease agreement, so we still have the chance to back out. So I don't know that needs to be in the conditions, because we would still have the chance to not move forward with the lease if we have a concern about that.
Yeah.
And
I'm
certainly
not
could.
suggesting that we back out of it, it's more, we can find 0.13 acres somewhere to help. But then you start running into the unknown question of what's the cost of the survey.
Right, and that's, I guess, what I was saying, that we could approve the conditional use permit without that and still have the chance to catch that before we do the lease. Because again, I don't know what condition you put on it, because we don't really know. We might say, would we put the condition that we'll do it, but only if it's up to X cost, or, we have so many question marks, I don't know how we would write that condition. So I guess I would personally feel comfortable just doing this one without that condition, understanding that we're all aware before we move forward and sign a lease agreement that we'll have that conversation.
Okay.
I do have an estimate, so it's a yellow book appraisal that we have to do, accompanied by a follow-up appraisal. It's an appraisal that's required by the National Park Service, so that estimate's about $7,500 to get that done. They have to come in, and right now, where the Land and Water Conservation Fund has been using either firm out of Rapid City or a firm out of Sioux Falls, so I got a quote from the firm out of Sioux Falls. They've done several of the yellow book appraisals for this conversion. The latest conversion was in Madison, where they built structure on LWCF encumbered piece of land, so they had to do a conversion of use, and that's what it cost them between the initial yellow book appraisal and then the follow-up, the review appraisal. That's about what the fee was, so.
And I'm sorry, Chad, I was gonna get you this morning, and Commissioner Bragg also. Where's the, and I guess I don't know where we're at with this new rooster, the new pheasant. Is that still, cause that's about where we're gonna go.
This area is to the east of there.
Oh, it's further east. Okay.
Yeah, the new pheasant statue was originally proposed closer to the road, similar to where I'm waving the hand here on,
Okay.
over in this area,
We
so.
don't really know where that's at either, but.
Right.
At this time, it's not, there is no current plans to move forward with that. The contractor that the chamber had secured did not perform, and they've gotten a refund of their money. So that deal at this point is
I see. Well,
not happening.
the big guy
Sean's on
took,
the chamber.
the big guy took the win pretty good, so.
Two of 'em.
He did,
Yeah.
Two of them.
he two
He
of
still got
them.
his chest sticking out.
That's right. So, all right,
Okay,
thank you, John.
anything else for me?
Anything
Thank
else
you.
for Blair that's on the phone, anybody? Okay. We have a motion and a second, so roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinriss.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Blair.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, moving on to 4.2, consider conditional use permit request filed by East Dakota Premium Beef LLC, doing business as High Plains Premium Beef LLC. Project address lots 1 and 2 of Vantage Business Park Edition, to construct and operate a meat processing facility, including utility solar array, where code requires a conditional use permit for this use in the area zone I-2, General Industrial District. You wanna take that, or should we have
Yeah.
these people?
Tammy, I think you were gonna start it off tonight?
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Robish and City Commissioners. My name is Tammy Crine, and I'm the Business Development Administrator with High Plains Premium Beef. Before we jump into our presentation tonight, I would like to introduce you to our board and our strategic partners. We have Mike Gruen, David Scoldland, Tyson Anderson, and Jesse Holmes on our board. Don Toole is our plant manager. Don Fitzgerald is with Fitzgerald Industries. He's going to be doing our layouts and things. Clinton Powell and Justin Brown with Pinpoint Corporation, and Kyle Peters and Brian Getch of A1 Development Solutions. Our board is comprised of farmers and ranchers with a like-minded vision to expand opportunities for local trusted beef producers in our state and provide families with high-quality, source-identified, nutritious beef. We have years of experience and dedication in the beef industry. We are producers ourselves, first and foremost. 2 of our board members operate small processing plants already, and our plant manager has years of experience in large processing, and he currently owns a processing facility now. We will encourage our producers to raise their own branded beef, and for the producers who do not have an outlet yet, we will aid in their marketing and sell their products to consumers under our brand, High Plains Premium Beef. The facility that we're proposing will offer customized USDA inspected processing. Our facility plans to offer harvesting, fabrication, packaging, and marketing of fresh and frozen subprimals, primals, portion cut steaks, and ground beef products. Our products will be able to serve existing brands in grocery stores, restaurants, and schools from our local producers. Not only will our producers be able to label their own self-promoting brand, but they will also be able to participate in the multitude of certified beef programs that are available, like certified Angus, certified Hereford, or USDA certified grass-fed beef, and others as well. We look forward to presenting our facility to you and hearing your thoughts and answers to any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening, council and mayor. We're back again. We have a PowerPoint here we're gonna roll through. I think you guys have seen this information in some format, but we do have some new info to go over for you. But before I get started, Kyle Peters at A1 Development.
Clint Powell at Pinpoint. So just a couple numbers to keep in mind here as we're talking about the project tonight. We're really talking about a facility that's capable of handling about 36,000 head a year is where we're projected at. That's 150 head per day. The conditional use permit that you have sitting in front of you, you'll notice actually calls for 300 head a day worth of cattle. That's intentional in how we wrote the conditional use permit, to allow for future expansion, that any expansion that would occur in the future will happen within the existing footprint. And so the building is designed to go to 300 head a day and basically would facilitate that through an additional shift of workers. The additional cooler space required for that expansion is already within the existing facility. The thing that's not there that would allow it to go to 300 head a day is a conversation that we've had with city engineering office. So at this point, the pre-treatment on the wastewater side is designed for 150 head a day. And any additional expansion anytime in the future would go back through wastewater permitting on the industrial use on the wastewater side. Currently, we're looking at about 35,000 gallons per day worth of water and wastewater use through the facility. And that just kind of in a nutshell is
Yep.
where we're headed with that.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
We'll head to the next slide here, and we wanted to throw up on the screen, you know, the elephant in the room is we've been in front of you guys before, well, not this body, but the hearing examiner before. And as you'll see here, on the west side of town, that was the existing building we were originally going to go in for a conditional use permit for before we pulled that. And now we're identifying 21 plus minus acres on the east side of town. Just to maybe rehash a little bit of the west side, we liked that site so much because it was an existing building, a condensed timeline. We felt like it was a nice footprint for what we wanted to do, but after going through several meetings here with the city, with the neighbors on both sides, and having some public outreach to to the community, we felt as though the east side might have been a better fit, even though it's ultimately gonna cost the project about $7 million more, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So, speaking of that number, here is the cost analysis between the west and east side. We made no bones about it, that it was gonna cost more to move. And this kind of gives you a high-level overview of what those costs will look like. You know, both sides are very comparable when you talk about a zoning perspective. Both I-2 industrial have meat processing as a conditional use. It just, you know, there's some line items there where it just tallies up to be roughly about $8 million more in additional cost. But we feel confident now looking through this is the right move to make.
So, Kyle talked a little bit about the proposed site, like we said, about 25 acres. This has previously been in for the replat of Lot 1 and Lot 2. When you look at Lot 1, that's really comprising the west side of what's outlined up there on the screen. Lot 2 is the east side. The primary processing facility will exist on the west side in that Lot 1. Between Lot 1 and Lot 2, there's a fairly substantial utility easement that exists in that area that we need to be cognizant of between those two sites. The ancillary solar project will then sit on Lot 2, which is the east side of the facility. Primary access is off of Custer Avenue. We'll get a little bit more into that here in a minute. But just so everybody remains aware, Custer Avenue, of course, is county right away, not city at this point. So proposed layout's really similar to what you guys had previously seen with the west site location that we talked about. A couple of primary things to highlight here is that primary access for cattle will come in on that northeast corner, which is the upper right-hand side. On that northeast corner, we're still committed to 100% of the animals being unloaded directly into the facility, so that there's no cattle storage outside of the building. And so that's the one thing that I need to make sure I highlight. The other thing to highlight is on the southeast corner or the bottom right-hand side. You'll notice that area, that is for future cooler expansion if we were to expand the facility in the future. And like I committed to earlier, that expansion has already been built into the footprint, so we don't anticipate any additional increase in footprint to the building in the future if that were to happen. Solar implementation, we'll talk a little bit about that. Where we really see solar going on a project like this is as the ability to provide baseload power for the facility without having to pull that off the grid. The entire system is still fully integrated into the grid with the ability of Northwestern then to provide power to the facility. Part of the reason that you do this is you really start to gain additional control over energy usage. And by sizing that solar facility within 125% of the projected use of the facility itself, you're really not then in a situation where you're looking at marketing that power back onto the grid. You're really trying to self-sustain what you're doing as an existing facility. And I know that was our recommendation from hearing examiner, is that as part of the solar project, that there's a glare study that has to be completed. That is a freestanding requirement of FAA as well, just based off of layout of where the airport is, and that's something that we're 100% comfortable with.
So the next slide here I'll chat about a little bit. So this is traffic projections. Anytime you have an industrial or even a commercial project, traffic is always brought up. So we just headed off the pass and talked a little bit about, we're talking a little bit about what we have for vehicle counts compared to what the average daily traffic of Highway 14 currently is. So you'll see here we broke these down into live cattle trucks. We've got, in year one, we've got 4 per day, beef products 7, and so on a list, for a total average daily traffic of 52. So currently, right now, that Highway 14 area, and what we did on the DOT map is we took up the intersection off of 14 and Custer Avenue as kind of our point for numbers. That came out to be about 1,100, almost 1,200 cars. So we only have about, it's under a 5% impact total on year one of the current highway traffic. It sounds as though, employee vehicles 38 and 4 live cattle pots coming in. It sounds like a lot, but when they're coming in, on 2 different shifts, it's really ultimately not that much on the traffic. On the year 5, they do increase just a little bit, but again, not substantial. And we would imagine by then for year 5, that average daily traffic would likely increase as well.
And so we remain cognizant also on the traffic side of the current condition of Custer Avenue. So we put in for the request for an additional access off of Custer Avenue. The county, I guess, previously discussed the reconstruction of Custer, and so that's something that will remain in the middle of that discussion as they move forward with that. But we realize that Custer Avenue right now is not in the best shape known to mankind, and there are impacts to that. So the proposed facility here that we're talking about, you're really talking about 50 full-time employees projected in year one, with a fair amount of economic development impact to the area, with about $5.8 million worth of total expected payroll event there. We really see the majority of staff coming from Huron and directly adjacent to Beale County, so we're comfortable with how that comes together. There are, of course, significant impacts to both property tax, sales tax, and school impacts. And so that's a conversation that we're comfortable with. We've had a sit-down discussion with superintendent of schools. We're comfortable with what the potential additional student population does to the school district. And I think you'll see that there's pretty significant benefits on the revenue side as well.
So we did have an economist, Jared McIntaffer with the Dakota Institute, do an economic impact study. It's very long, so we try to abbreviate that for the purposes of the PowerPoint. So we only have a few slides in here that talk about everything that Clinton just mentioned in terms of impacts to the property tax base, the schools, things like that, and what that really means to the basis of cattle. And this is just kind of high level where the processing plants are, kind of in a dry 4-state region. You'll see here, everyone asks us, well, why Huron? Well, it's positioned pretty nicely compared to where other processing plants are in the proximity of cattle. It is 150 head a day, which seems like a lot, and it is, but we're still the 4th largest in the state. Demcota up in Aberdeen, I think last I heard, did over 1,000 a day, so we're substantially smaller than they are. I'm going to chime in this quick. Speaking of economic impact study, we did have just a few more in here. This shows you the size of the plants in South Dakota. So again, Demcota leads the pack there. They do a ton, and then all the way down to Sturgis Meats, which does your custom exempt retail, stuff like that. There's the cattle head-on feed numbers in Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota. We ship a lot of those cattle out of South Dakota to be finished somewhere else. So this is a niche market for us.
And I was gonna mention that while we talk about this being the 4th largest plant in South Dakota, I mean, when we start to look at cattle on feed in the directly supplied area, I mean, this is really just a blip in what we're producing for cattle in central South Dakota, and the ability to provide the plant what it needs.
There's never a real apples to apples comparison when we're trying to look for a plant like this, because it's going to be a brand new state of the art, and we've got some team members that can talk about that in a minute. But we did wanna do kind of a side-by-side comparison of what growth around a processing facility looks like. So we pulled this one from Storm Lake, Iowa. I believe they do poultry. I'm drawing a blank here. Is it
Pork.
Okay,
Pork
thank
and
you.
poultry.
Pork plant. So it's, again, not an apples-to-apples comparison, but as you can see, over the course of several years, that community has developed around there, not only commercial, but residential as well. We got one more here, Grand Island. This is a JVS plant, so again, far from apples-to-apples comparison based on what we wanna do on a way smaller scale, but it does show, the growth from 1975 to today. So I'll keep going here. Again, as it relates to South Dakota, we got a property tax card pulled from Yankton. So Simple Meats is down in Yankton. They've been operating for several years down there. I've never been in that plant. Don Fitzgerald and our team has, and he can speak about that. But again, it doesn't represent what we're trying to do here. We're building a brand new state-of-the-art facility, with new standards based on what Simple had when they were built. But still, you can see here that it has increased. This is a home, excuse me, this is a home that is 148 yards from the facility, and it has gone over up in value time after time. And then, again, another representation of a bigger plant down in Nebraska at the JBS location.
So earlier I talked a little bit about lot 1 and lot 2. I think the important thing to realize here is that as we looked at the site and looked at the future growth of Vantage Park, that there's a much larger kind of layout that happened associated with this. And so the primary access that's to the north side of the site actually wraps all the way long-term around the entire site. So that's done primarily for a couple reasons. Number one, it's done so that we can access additional industrial lots in the future on the east side of the business park. The other reason to wrap that around is some of the unique infrastructure requirements that we have on the south side of that site. And so we don't anticipate by any means that the two facilities that we'll construct will use 20 acres worth of ground space. But that south road, it's really important that that lays out the way it does because of an existing manhole in that current right-of-way easement. And so that road intentionally wraps around at that location so that we're able to incorporate that manhole in the center of the road rather than having it kind of abandoned out in the middle of the field. And so we did a preliminary layout on both drainage, water and wastewater from a flow capacity for the rest of Vantage Park, just to ensure that we've got the ability to serve future wastewater needs for all of those lots as well. So, up on the screen, you can see some renderings that really represent where the facility is going. We're in a redesign kind of phase at this point, and just past a 50% design level. But we're at this point, it's likely going to a pre-engineered metal building for a design type. That pre-engineered metal building, though, isn't just gonna look like a random storage shed out in the middle of the prairie, and so we're doing some things to make sure that it's not an eyesore to the area by any means. And then one of the things that you just saw from that last one, again, is just highlighting the fact that 100% of the animals, as well as the offal and any rendering, will actually exist inside the facility. As part of the hearing examiner's recommendation, I'm willing to guarantee that there's no rendering that'll happen on site or within Huron. All of that rendering is happening outside of Vito County, and so we're comfortable with that condition that was put on by the hearing examiner. And so I think that, in a nutshell, is where we're at.
Yeah, I would just round it out by saying we do have some letters of support from an individual that was impacted on the west side and is also impacted on the east side as well, that he has said that he is supporting it. Another thing that's to note too is we did have a meeting with the Dakota Provisions leadership team a couple months ago to talk, unfortunately it was about the same time the bird flu conversation came out with cattle. So we had an honest conversation about where that is headed and what happens, and lots of engineering talk as it relates to wastewater, water pressure, things like that. I'm not sure if anyone is here from Dakota Provisions tonight to express any concerns, but we feel like that's pretty fleshed out. So we went through that quick, but we'll stand by for questions.
I appreciate you abbreviating that a little bit, 'cause I remember the last meeting we had, and it wasn't quite abbreviated, but I appreciate, and it's all important, I get that, it's all important. It's important on your side, and it's important on the other side too, so.
Right. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
What's Okay. Yeah, City Planner Cranston, you
Yeah.
have some more to add?
Yes, as you can see up on the board, this is the most recent proposed layout for Vantage Park, including the future layout going forward. And so, as Mr. Powell said, you can see where the road, we're proposing that be named Vantage Park Drive. That will come up as an ordinance at a later date. But that would wrap all the way around toward the south and exit again on the south side of their plant site there. The yellow obviously is lots 1 and 2 of Vantage Park, and that plat has since been approved. And so now that will enable a legal description to be derived, and then ultimately a deed could be developed from that plat. So that is one of the things. The hearing examiner did look at this. He made a recommendation that no rendering be allowed within 50 miles. I don't know that this body could exert that kind of jurisdiction that you can dictate who does business with who. But, so I'm not suggesting that that is the correct recommendation. However, I know that the rendering is certainly a question going forward, and so this body should be cognizant of the fact that the neighbors in the area are concerned about that. Going forward, I would recommend that approval for the project be given with the conditions as I've laid out in the planner memo in your packet, as well as the engineering packet, or the engineering memo in your packet as well. City Engineer Runge may want to chime in on his comments, if he would like.
Yeah, the conditions that we had provided that are in that memo, I think resonated by planning and by building services. So there were some things that we had previously discussed. One of the items is the solar and the impact of the glare, and you know, a study is performed, and possibly the commission wants to consider screening as a condition of the permit. Moving through other items that we have is that the recommendation that, you know, carcasses or products are never left outside on that, included in that, I think, and that was again resonated by both planning and by building services. The wastewater, basically recommend that another condition of the permit is that they receive full approval of the industrial discharge permit. At this point, we're really close with that. They've been waiting on this before that they finish off some things. But we've been working with them for the treatment, and so that the city feels comfortable that they're providing the treatments could be necessary to discharge to our system and meet any sort of permit that we would issue to them. Another item would be is that at this point, they do not exceed the maximum wastewater discharge of 40,000 gallons per day without that being updated with the discharge permit. One of the things when we get into this, and we've seen it with other industries, is that when you come in, they don't necessarily have a great handle always on what they're gonna need for water supply or wastewater discharge. And sometimes those numbers end up being low, and then we struggle to work with those numbers later from a treatment standpoint when they exceed that. So we're comfortable with this. We do have some additional capacity, but at the same point, Vantage Park is a large industrial park. We don't necessarily want to give away all the capacity we have out there on this scenario, right? And then the final recommendation that we're looking at is that, again, the water is also capped at that without approval of the industrial discharge permit, which meets their needs at this point from what they're telling us for the 150 hectares. We recommend approval of it.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in support of?
They want to get up.
Motion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I would entertain a motion to, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve for further discussion.
To approve for further discussion, is that what you
Second?
said? Couldn't hear that very well.
Yeah, motion to approve for further discussion.
So we're gonna be allowed to speak?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All right, is there anyone else here that would like to speak in approval of East Dakota Premium Beef? And if you do, I guess I would like you to not repeat as much as you can, but you're welcome to do anything. Sure, Mr. Harris?
Ted Hader, Greater Huron Development Corporation, High Plains Premium Beef, East Dakota Beef, proposing to purchase that property from Greater Huron. Looked a lot into this in the last couple of weeks. Had a conversation or two on the side after the hearing examiner meeting to see if I could find more information about similar plants like this one in the United States in the general area. And there may be something similar to this, but the common denominator that I can't find is a place that keeps all the animals inside all of the time. The places that do that are smaller locker plants, like we have the one here in town with Huron
Custom meats?
Huron Custom Meats, yes. And that's a very small scale thing in comparison to what we're looking at. Everything else I found in the 100 or 200 or 300 head per day processing facility has a stockyard of some sort outdoors. So to say an apples to apples comparison, I couldn't find one. I reached out to places in Utah and Iowa and Nebraska that have similarly sized plants, and all of the response was the same thing. It's generally not an issue except for the cattle that are outside. Is that the case here? I can't say that this will be a perfect facility, but that is a differentiator between this one and those. So in trying to figure out what do we compare this thing to, the local and closest comparable thing I could come up with is Dakota Provisions East plant, where they process turkeys. One, according to the city's animal units definition in their city ordinance, one cow or one steer would be roughly equal to 25 turkeys. 300 head per day would be about 7,500 turkeys. I think Dakota Provisions does quite a bit more than that. And again, I can't say that there is no smell from Dakota Provisions, no adverse impact to the neighbors, because I can't make that determination on behalf of anyone else. What I can say is per animal units, based on a similar number, I don't know exactly how many Dakota Provisions runs through that plant in a day, but the impact that I have noticed in the last week going out there regularly hasn't been significant. I don't know if it is significant to the neighbors. I think most of us have been through a tour of that facility at one time or another and have a feel roughly for what it is. So with all of that said, our recommendation from the Greater Huron Development Corporation is to approve the project, not just approval, but approval with conditions to address as many of the concerns from the neighbors as possible. That's all.
Thank you, Ted. Anyone else in favor of? Okay, seeing none, I would, oh, Jesse?
Hello, my name is Jesse Holm, live at 204 IC Highway 37, north of town, and was contacted by this group last year. They've been working on kind of a new niche for a beef processing plant in South Dakota, and really feels like it's gonna hit a lot of good points. You guys are more familiar than me with the benefits something like this would bring to a town like Huron, like the long-term tax revenue and the economic boost from all the, you know, to me, these jobs are like, you know, they're producing, not unlike the jobs that we have from the Ag Sense crew, you know, we're producing new things, so, I mean, that seems like a pretty important layer to have in all the different kinds of jobs and bringing in service level jobs, obviously, and then on the producer side, I don't know, I think it's gonna be really exciting for a lot of the cattle producers in the area to be a part of this, to be owners and delivering cattle and growing their brands as much as they want. So, you guys know firsthand all our efforts that we put in to be good neighbors. I think you saw all that. We take it seriously, and we want to be a great part of this community. So that's one of the reasons we're going to all these lengths, that you can't find a comparable anywhere at this size. The goal is for this plant to be a demonstration, and one that we want to bring other communities to see how well it works. And then, so they can get a vision of how it could fit into their community and really change the footprint of what South Dakota can be. It's a new model. It's not really been done to distribute processing, right? The model's always more and bigger in one spot. Well, maybe South Dakota could do something a little different. So, super high level overview. That's how I see a lot of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I didn't mean to miss anybody. Sorry about that, Jesse. All right, if not, I would invite anyone that has any opposition, and again, I would like to, anyone is welcome to say, let's just not let's not build a big snowball, okay? Who wants to be first?
I'm Becky Freeman. I live on 937 Custer Avenue, 4.5 blocks from the proposed plant. Blocks, not miles, blocks. I feel like it's here we go again. It was just a few years ago that we got together, all of the people in Custer Avenue and the county road, to try to prevent a rendering plant that wasn't supposed to be there from coming. Well, it came anyway. This is how it is for us on the east side of Huron. The residents of Huron flush their toilets, and it disappears, only to reappear in our backyards and our ever-increasing sewage lagoons. This has been since the 60s when that sewage lagoon area was built. It was called a state-of-the-art facility at that time. Huron dumps its garbage into a can, someone picks it up and brings it out to our backyard, and that's been going on forever. We're used to all of those things. Huron brings a huge turkey plant to town with many promises. Huron is now going to have a lot of money. But I'm on the Parks and Recreation Board, and we have 4 full pages of items that need to be repaired, replaced, painted, fixed, every way possible. And we have no timeline because we know we will only be able to do a fraction of those things because we do not have the money. There is no money for all of those things, and those are part of our community, our aesthetics, our children. There should be money for those things, but we don't seem to have it. We have a rendering plant that we were told we would never have, but as soon as Dakota Turkey asked to have it moved to Huron, it came, as we knew it would. We spent weeks and weeks talking to the state environmental hazard people, planning our strategy, sending out flyers, talking to worried neighbors, hoping you would listen. This right here is an intimidating process. And yes, we were intimidated and we were insulted by the crew from Aberdeen. we of course lost. I just wish some of you could be out here east of town to experience what we experienced at that time and what we still have to put up with. A group of us even drove to Minnesota to see what was called the sister plant, and it was exactly what we expected. They were using chlorine products to clean their chimneys. The government had told them they couldn't do that any longer, so they began using a masking agent, which smells very much like a skunk has sprayed in your yard, only it's the entire square mile that smells like that. And that's here too. Now we've been slapped in the face by the city again, and that's how some of us feel. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but I hear some people at the last meeting weren't exactly friendly either. We are told Huron will be rich again. All this money is going to be coming into Huron. We out here in Valley Township have to literally beg and beg to have our road fixed or gravel because there is no money for our township. We've been driving on Custer Avenue for years. It is completely inadequate and dangerous. Now we find out that it's in the planning stages to fix it, simply because a beef plant is coming. Why not before then? It's the most dangerous road except for Old Highway 14 in the county. Our road, Custer Avenue, is 1 mile from Highway 14 to the curve. There are 2 active businesses, 13 homes just on Custer North. Across the highway, there is a home almost directly across from where the plant is supposed to go. Directly across the road, a family home. There are 7 to 8 homes directly west of Custer on the Highway 14 access road. There is a construction company and home on Highway 14 West, less than half of a mile from the proposed plant. A mile is 8 blocks. That's not very far. My driveway is 5.5 blocks from the plant site. All of our neighbors on Custer are closer. 5, 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3. The people across the road are a block. These are blocks, not miles. Custer is like any street in our town, except the houses are farther apart. But they are houses, homes, people, livelihoods, no less meaningful or important than those on the west side of town. That's what's burning us up, I think, is the fact that somehow or other, even though the site on the west side of town was perfect for them in almost every way, now it's perfect on the east side of town. I don't know what they said that convinced you. There have been at least 6 accidents at the Custer Highway 14 intersection and 1 fatality. We asked representatives from the State Highway Department in Pierre to come out and look at the intersection to see if a light could be put up. They did come, they looked at the intersection, they did a traffic count. It was not necessary, they felt, so instead they gave us a turning lane, both directions, which quite possibly has increased the danger. When there are 2, 3, or 4 double semis, and there are mostly double semis, lined up at that turning lane, and 10 or 15 cars from the turkey plant lined up behind them. Every so often, one of those cars from the turkey plant, or just someone coming to Huron, will pull around the semis, so they don't have to wait for them. Well, you know what that means to the person that's turning onto Custer? It caused a death. Not enough money for a light to protect people, but plenty of taxpayer dollars to destroy our Dakota Avenue from the library to the south end of town. When I read the minutes of the variance hearing on February 21st, I noted that one man felt that because the stink has always been out here on the east side of town, it should always be here. The reason the old armor packing plant was built up on top of a hill over the James River was not because it was the best place for odor. It was because they piped all of their offal through a huge pipe and ran it directly into the James River. If any of you grew up here and were children in Riverside Park, all you had to do was walk down to the dam, and there was a huge pipe, and certain times of the day, gore flew out of that pipe, and it was blood and everything else, directly into the James River. That was, of course, stopped by the environmental protection people, but that was what we were doing. We were pumping it down to Mitchell. Okay, I have few comments and then I'll quit, about, certain things that I read for the minutes from the meeting in February, not the last meeting. When, the beef people were asked about landscaping and a tree farm, they said trees of 3 species could be planted. I think a guarantee would be nice that trees will be planted. I don't know why that couldn't be included as a guarantee. I don't know how you enforce a guarantee, but it would be something that might make people feel a little better. One gentleman voiced concern about his well, and that the Cowboy Church was nearby. There is a Hispanic church a half a block away from this proposed site. One gentleman mentioned that he had checked with NOAA about wind direction. We did the very same thing when the rendering plant was imminent, and we have found with their statistics that wind is not always a factor in either direction of the odor, if a masking agent is strong. Another gentleman was concerned that this company will not be a good neighbor, and that what will we say if they want to enlarge the plant further than they have stipulated? What will we do? A woman in that area said that she's concerned about being able to see the plant from her home, is concerned about her house value decreasing. She is also concerned about her neighbors who have just built a new home. She's concerned about Buchanan School being 1 mile away. These are all valid concerns. We in our neighborhood are all 5 blocks or closer to the site, and we're concerned as well. Another gentleman noted his new home, the sewer system, the well. This company this company will offering a living wage to its employees, and that would be guaranteed. He also voiced concern over the employee issue. Where will we find all of these people? Are they waiting in the wings somewhere? Where will they live? I wonder not only if the workforce can be found, but also where they will live. Much of the rental housing in Huron is full, and much of it is in dire need of repair. Many of the homes people live in certain parts of Huron are 100 years old or older and have never been modified. So many dilapidated homes that are the only option to these workers. No one in Huron should have to live and raise a family in homes like many of these are. One gentleman doubted the veracity of the estimated cost to move to the east. And even with efforts to mitigate odor, the east side is better, he felt. We want to know why. All reasons being similar and pretty equal. One gentleman asked about how long the company has been planning this business. We heard about it last August, when Northern Natural Gas asked us to move their piping station, I guess they call it, to the corner of our property near Dakota Energy. They said at that time that a beef plant from Sioux Falls was planning to use this site. We have since heard this from a good friend of ours that used to live here and has moved to Sioux Falls. One couple mentioned that the winds that carry odor would lessen their property value. As the beef plant cannot guarantee or describe the degree of odor involved, and no one from GHDC or City Commission has been able to visit a similar plant, no one has any way of even commenting on the degree of odor there actually will be.
Mrs. Freeman, could I just remind you that I know there's some other people here in your corner here, and I'd like to give them permission to speak, so let's.
I'm just about done.
Okay, thank you.
Odor and traffic are some of the most life-affecting issues. They affect everything else, and we don't know what to expect with either. There are also concerns about air quality, chemicals, spillage, noise, lighting. Lots of worries for all of us. Neither side is a good choice, but you can see why we might resent the fact that everyone thinks we should have to grin and bear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak?
Mayor, Commissioners, Margaret Cheddar. I live at 1460 Riverview Drive. Before I express my concerns, I have a question. Who actually is in charge of the vision for Huron? Or is there one?
No one individually. No one individually.
Is there a group?
All of us.
So is your vision, what is your vision for Huron? we don't have a vision of what Huron is or should be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. As a result, whenever a company, and no disrespect, but whenever a company comes presented with an option of east side, west side, or something that is pretty traumatic to our community, it's a big deal. If there was a vision for our community that said, this is the caliber of schooling, medical care, parks and recs, housing, employees to attain for, this would not be a question. Why? Because other communities like Watertown, Aberdeen, Sioux Falls would immediately check their strategic plan and say, this does not fit. Why? We talk about the smells and this particular business. What about the impact of Huron? I'm sorry, but Walmart just doesn't do it all the time. And it's a struggle for other businesses in this community to make a go. Why? Because you continue to bring places like Dakota Provisions and possibly this business in. They don't eat at Little Tokyo. They don't buy their shoes at Potter's. Why? Because that's not their culture, that's not their thing, and they're not paid enough. So the accountability of what happens to our community as a result of Dakota Provisions, which, by the way, I was at many of those meetings and we were lied to. Lied to. They were gonna come and live here while he's still in Aberdeen. We're gonna build great apartments for these employees. They couldn't afford them. So now the slumlords are taking care of them. The accountability for decisions like this falls with you because we elected you. And if this is what you want our community to become, another Laverne, another Sioux City, another Wilmer, Minnesota, that's on you guys. Now, some people have told me, well, then move. I'm sorry, I was here. I bought a home. We built a business. And my grandkids are going to this school. And I want something better for them. And I hope you do too. So don't just blanket say, yep, we approve. Think about it. Is it really bringing value to our community? And I would say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Sure.
Rodney Freeman, 937 Custer. I'd like to ask Mr. Powell a few questions rather than make a statement.
Are you up for a few? For a couple? We'll take a couple. How's that?
You want to stand up?
Okay,
Thank you.
I've been through this before. Let's do this.
You and I and my wife and I believe my daughter chatted with you too after the last week's meeting.
Absolutely.
And you made it clear that your first choice was the west side.
True statement.
And why was that?
When you look at economic feasibility for the site on the west side and constructability timeline, the west side was a preferred alternative.
And the infrastructure was largely in place, correct?
True.
The traffic pattern as far as getting to your site with your cattle trucks is much better on the west side. Is that a fair statement? You're not turning on that narrow Augusta Avenue.
I won't say that it's much better on the west side.
It's more suitable though on the west side, correct?
Not a DOT engineer. I won't go there. That's my engineering license. No, we're not gonna stipulate that one.
And the other thing is you saved $24 million.
There's a cost savings, it's not a $24 million cost savings, but there's a cost savings.
Well, I thought you
24%.
said it was,
24% increase to move from the west side to the east side.
7 million.
I believe, okay,
Okay.
all right, which is a significant chunk of money.
Agreed?
And you withdrew that permit
Sure.
request for the west side. And that was because, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was because of the opposition out there. Correct?
Politics, yep.
Politics, well, what else was involved if it wasn't the people voicing their concerns on the west side? Was there any other reason?
So there's concern, I think, with the way planning and zoning works in Huron, that if you go all the way through with a conditional use permit and you're denied a conditional use permit, then you're required to wait an additional year before resubmitting. And so, based off of what we're seeing with economic development and the requirements of the project, we made the decision that we may or may not get through with a permit.
Right.
And
You didn't want to chance it.
Sure.
And that was because people were voicing their objections.
Correct.
And the objections largely centered on the proximity to homes and the potential decrease in home value. Is that a fair statement?
No, there's no proof of home value decrease.
That's the argument that was made to us. We don't agree with that.
No,
but
I
that's
understand
100%
that, but that was the argument that was made.
Sure.
And that's the same argument being made tonight. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, I agree that you're probably making the same argument.
And people were concerned about the potential odors.
Sure.
And that's another concern that's being expressed here tonight.
Right, we don't agree with either of those, but yes, that's true.
I'm not asking you to agree with
Yeah.
that. The fact is, the people on the west side voiced the exact same concerns that we're expressing tonight, right?
True.
Okay. Why aren't you withdrawing your permit tonight? The same concerns?
We're committed to being a good neighbor and having a project that's a benefit to the community on the east side, just like we were on the west side.
How are we any different than the people on the west side?
Right on
Are our home values, our enjoyment of life, our living conditions, are they any different than the people on the west side?
From our standpoint, as a business, we're committed to designing the best facility possible. We don't believe, from our standpoint, that there are negative impacts to home values based off of what we've seen in other locations. We are 100% committed to mitigating odor concerns.
And I understand that, Mr.
And
Carter.
we're-
I'm not arguing with you. You gotta understand that we've been promised a lot of things
I do.
for many, many years. And this is just one more thing that everybody wants to put on out there to add to everything else that we're already living with and smelling.
Right, truth.
I mean, we've heard so many promises over the years.
Well, let's go a step further though, and talk about the personal commitment that I made the other day.
I understand that, but what
Let's talk
happens,
about it, though.
what happens when the plant changes hands? What happens when you're no longer the consulting engineer and it's got a new board of directors? And they say, as did the turkey plant, it's costing us $1 million a year to haul the waste from the turkey plant to Minnesota. We need a rendering plant. A year after, they promised us there was gonna be no rendering plant. And the conditions on the permit were changed. What happens to us then?
So you've got a political process here that I think you get to go through.
You're-
And I realize that it's a political process.
You're
But you have a
absolutely right.
due process that you get to go through for that to happen. And I'm committed to, while I'm involved, there will not be that.
I
I'm
understand.
committed.
Unfortunately, you're not gonna be on the board, are you?
I will likely be on the board of directors, yes, actually.
Thank
I
you.
will go that extra step and say that as well.
Thank you,
I'm
Clint. Appreciate it.
here to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Thank you, Mr. Powell, for accepting those questions. Anyone else that would like to speak? And again, I just want to remind I understand what's going on here, and everybody understands what's going on here, so let's not repeat. We've got other business to take care of tonight. I mean, we could be here all night, but we've got other business to take care of, but go ahead.
279 Custer, I'm your neighbor.
What was your name, sir?
James Dryer.
James Dryer.
My concern really isn't promoting something like this. My concern is, where is the employees coming from? Because wage-wise, if they're not comparable to a lot of the other ones, it just causes more issues for Huron and other neighboring businesses. That's a true concern. Where are these employees coming from? Because we can't do it at the Gold Provisions. You can't do it at Jack League's, which is not a part of this community, I don't think, but that's the only concern I can really see as being a huge issue. Because you're just gonna steal from all these other small businesses, you're gonna steal them from the turkey plant, you're gonna steal them from Jack Link's, you're gonna take them from some very good businesses on 14. I think we need to think about that part. Where are the employees coming from? It's great if you can pull them in. Sometimes that's short term. And we do need jobs in this area. We do need businesses in this area. But I thought it was also gonna be farther back off of the road. I didn't realize it was gonna be right on our road. That's a little bit of a concern too, especially with my property being right on the other side almost. Sometimes it's hard enough just to get on that road safely. So.
Anyone else like to speak?
My name is Marilyn Hanson. I live at 606 Custer Avenue. So I'm on that good road. It's a very bumpy road. Someone mentioned how bad it was. There was an article in the paper about the traffic coming from the east on the Highway 55. Stop out, there is very few traffic that come from the east that's 55. They're usually faster. The only traffic I see at 55 is people coming from the north on Custer Avenue. That's why you've got holes from 4 to 6 inches deep. It's a very, very dangerous corner. Please go out there sometime and just stay there. A lot of times there isn't anyone, but then again, there's these semis. Be careful, people, not to get sandwiched in between these semis, because it could happen. And when you're trying to get across, if you're coming from the south, trying to go north, it's really dangerous, especially in the winter time or when it's foggy. Many people drive white vehicles. You do not see them white vehicles coming out of that snow, like especially in the winter time. But it's always dangerous. It's a very dangerous corner. So any of you travel there, please be cautious, because it could be your life as well as anybody else's. My husband crosses the road quite often. He's an elderly gentleman. He's very careful. But everyone needs to be careful on that road. And for the added traffic with the beef plant, it's gonna be horrendous. I'm sorry I missed the previous meetings. Are you the panel that denied these people their right on the west side?
They withdrew their application.
Yeah.
It did not come to this level, the application.
Okay. They were denied, so now they're looking to the east.
They withdrew their
They withdrew.
application.
They had a pretty good reason, because they probably knew they'd be denied. If those people on the west side have concern, shouldn't make any difference if it's the east side, north side, or south side. If it gets to the point where it has to be denied, you know. I'm not against industry, but I am against that corner where we have to travel. And you're just too close to the city of Huron. Packing plants, great, most of them used to be pretty good wages, had pretty good benefits. I remember banking was there's also drawbacks. The gentleman mentioned that they would hire from Beetle County. Beetle County? Who is in Beetle County anymore? Who's coming in? A prominent businessman within the last month from Sioux Falls just told me, you're going to get a lot of more immigrants, and I want you to know, most of them are gonna be illegal. That's a big problem here. Not only for the city of Huron, it's for all cities. And along with that group comes people, they're not willing to really buy the homes. If they do, they don't keep them up. As I think Becky Freeman mentioned, take a look at some of these homes, drive through some of it. I don't know if you people are involved in that. Something needs to be done, as Marty Cheddar mentioned. We need a little more foresight. I know the government's a big problem of that. Pretty hard to put it on local people, but we all need to take a look at it.
We're involved with that, but the beef plant is not involved with that, so let's, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but they're not involved with that, so we are, so that's, doesn't really pertain to this part of it, but.
Right. I just wanna say, I'm concerned about the odor of the plant. There's only so much you can do. I grew up in a farm, I love the smell of cattle. So I'll tell you,
There you go.
packing plants, you drive by any packing plant, it's got their own odor. Regulate it, this and that. So that's a concern too. Code of provisions, yeah, sometimes not in my backyard. Do I smell it? Sometimes I want to call over there and say, are you cleaning all those turkeys outside today, and you're putting all the feathers into the water? Not a lot, but it does happen. So, I'm just saying, I guess I'm opposed to this new adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. I tell you what we'll do. The beef plant had 3, 4 individuals. We've had 4 here. I'll give one more, okay? Because I think we're kind of all on the same, we're all on the same page here. So let's go one more, and then we gotta take care of some more business here, okay? Is that okay?
You mean if we disagree with it, we can object to it? Because I certainly object. I think there are a lot of people here, and I think they have a right to speak their opposition.
Okay.
I didn't hear any limit put on the applicant.
There's no limit except for 3 minutes. There we go. You're right, I'll go with you.
Was that enforced with that 3 minutes? Was that enforced with the applicants?
No.
Excuse me?
No, you're right, it was not.
Thank you.
I stand corrected. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sarah Rubish, 938 Custer Avenue Northeast. And I think that what this happened just now is part of the problem is I think we feel like maybe we're not getting the same fair treatment that the west side of Huron got. And it's not east versus west side. We're not some Broadway musical. I don't mean it to be that way. But it does feel like the louder we yell and the more angry, at least that's what we heard from at the last meeting, was that the hearing was very, very contentious, very angry, and we didn't want that. We all live here, you are our neighbors, we go to school together, we work together. So we were trying to be, we don't want to fight about this, but we also want to be treated equally and fairly. And so part of the idea that because the West Side people were angry and contentious in their hearing, that I don't know if GHDC encouraged you to change it or to drop it, or if that was your choice. I'm not sure what happened there. But the fact that they decided to is understandable. They don't live here. They have a business they're trying to put here. I get that. But it just seems unfair that because they were angry, they pulled their permit and now it's over here and it's like, well, it's too late to say no to these people, so we're just gonna let it go through. I think that's how we're kind of feeling. My main concern, and I had a letter in the paper this weekend. I teach newspaper, and so I'm always telling my students that they shouldn't be afraid to be concerned, educated citizens and share their opinions. It is terrifying up here. But I did say 24 million, and if I was wrong in that, I apologize. I thought that's what the number was that you said at the hearing meeting. So if it was 24%, I stand corrected. But my concerns are still the same that I had in that. The first one was the increased traffic. Custer Avenue, just like they've said, is a terrifying road when you are a mother with children. I routinely tell my daughter she is not allowed to drive on that road. If it's snowing, if it's foggy, if it's raining, if the turkey plant is letting out, I don't let her go on that road, because there's no room for error. There's no shoulder, there are no lines, there are a million trucks and people driving 75, 80 miles an hour. It's bad road. I'm frustrated that this, and again, it's not your fault, but I'm frustrated that they were told that Custer Avenue was going to be rebuilt before I knew, because I drive that road on a daily basis, so does my entire family. I pay taxes for that road. So I don't understand why they knew that it was a possibility before I did.
To be honest, we
Yeah,
found out last Wednesday at the hearing examiner meeting. I have not heard that aside from them.
And see, that's a problem. I'm not saying that's your problem,
It's in the county minutes.
but,
Yeah.
okay,
I didn't go to
when
the
was that
county meeting,
from?
so.
It's within the last year, they've had multiple conversations.
Conversations about it, okay, and that's very possible, because I don't read the county minutes, I'm gonna be honest with that. So that is a concern, I guess my concern, since it was in there, that alleviates that. But then I would like, if it's happening regardless, I would like that there's some guarantee, not just a public assurance that, you know, a couple years from now, we're gonna fix Custer. I want to know that it's going to be fixed, and I would hope that you guys would want to know that as well before you vote to approve something like this, because even though it may not affect your daily life, it affects my daily life from 7 a.m. when I leave for school until midnight when the last person comes home at our house. So that's a real concern to me. I also would echo the concern about the tree strips. I think you all know I like trees, and I would really like to ask that if it is eventually put through out on Custer, that there is a guarantee or a requirement for landscaping and not just a couple of bushes that die, you know, a year after they're planted, actual teeth in it so that the trees grow and they shelter things and look nice at the same time, because we live there, it's our neighborhood, and I care about it. I wanna live here the rest of my life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Anyone else?
Just for the record, there is a landscape ordinance and they will be forced to adhere to that, so.
And I appreciate
Yeah,
that, but I live
I
here and I
understand.
drive all around
I
town, and
understand.
those landscape ordinances are not always enforced.
All right, seeing no one else come.
I just have a quick question.
Yes,
Mr. Hayter mentioned something about a condition about rendering. A 50-mile, on the phone the other day, you said, would that be feasible to have a guarantee that there would be no rendering within 50 miles of Huron, and that was brought up again this evening? And you mentioned that that's not a feasible thing.
I know, I question whether this body has the authority to enforce such a law, because we can't dictate, that would be like trying to dictate a lawyer, so, you know, us dictating to an attorney's office what clients they could have.
But aren't you
That's
just saying
all I
it can't be
question
here?
about.
Aren't you just saying it can't be here?
That's all I was saying.
Oh, I know, but I mean, couldn't you just say that in the next 50 years, you cannot add a rendering facility, because you have promised on paper you will never do that?
Well, this body can't be making guarantees, it can't bind a future council.
So that means they could,
You
they
know,
want 1,000 head a day,
This-
anytime they
I'm
want?
just saying what the South Dakota law says, I'm sorry.
So then why was that brought up at all if you guys knew you couldn't do
Well,
it?
I think part of the issue might be a 50-mile radius. I mean, we can dictate that, but we can't control if Sanborn County would allow it, for example.
Oh, I understand that completely.
You know,
But
it's out of our jurisdiction.
But I do think that you could say, you have promised not to ever have a rendering facility for this many cattle on
Yeah,
or near this industrial park.
and that's part of this conditional use permit is limiting the number of cattle and the waste that it's, producing.
But the hearing examiner is the one that put the 50-mile radius in his.
Is that in there?
That is in the hearing examiner's recommendation.
But that won't be,
Well, we cannot, I mean, we can't say Woolsey can't do something, right? We don't have that
We can say
authority.
the city's
So
Huron.
we can
Just-
say
just-
within our
just a minute,
city.
fellas.
Yeah.
but that's the city limits you're talking,
Hold
city
on,
limits.
hold on, please. I think we have some information here to answer your question, Bill.
Yeah, so, oddly enough, I serve on city council in Watertown, and we have discussion all the time about what we want in the community or what we don't want. And we have a lake and city limits, and a lot of people don't want restaurants, retail on the lake. So we're going through the process through our ordinance to say, well, do we want them or not? And you can, through legislation, I'm looking at the city council, say, we don't want rendering in city limits at all. And you can actually put in your ordinance that says no rendering facilities, because right now, I'm assuming, rendering would be a conditional use in certain zone land, and you can just say, no rendering at all. That would take us out of the equation, and that's a city council issue, that's a legislative process that they have to go through, but that's one way you can protect, because, to Councilman Smith's point, you can't, dictate what is done in the county or what is done in other communities, but you can, in ordinance, establish what you do and don't want in the community.
And then
Okay,
you
but-
can request a variance from that ordinance, which is exactly what they did with the turkey plant.
That's how we got the rendering plan, and
So it does no good to put it as a condition anyway.
So one thing that we could do, Rodney, and I'll leave this up to you, and if Ted's acceptable to it as well, but I mean, we could write a covenant for the Vantage Park industrial park to basically say that no rendering within Vantage Park. And that could be a covenant.
Before the deed is transferred, yes,
Yeah.
they could put that as a covenant, a restricted covenant.
Is that something you're comfortable with?
just within Vantage Park though.
Well, that's all that we've got control of from the
Oh, I
covenant
see.
side, or
Yeah.
all that Ted has control of from the covenant side.
I think it needs to be farther than the city limits, because Custer Avenue and that whole area is outside the city limits.
But that's,
That would be a county.
we don't, we can't.
County
do
commission would
anything.
have to get involved, would they?
I believe so.
Sure.
Do you?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, 'cause
it's
we
a-
can't, we
that's a
can't
big
go
deal.
outside of the city limits. I mean, it wouldn't be binding, I don't believe.
Well, that's a main concern. It's one of the main concerns.
Okay. Anyone else? Have anything to, opposition, pro? Forever hold your peace.
So just for clarification, could Barry just read through again an itemized listing of all of the conditions that were recommended by staff and by the, because that one, Jason, to your question, that would be in there, and if we acted on it as recommended, we can't enforce 50 miles, but we could enforce a condition of no rendering within city limits for this project. So he's got a pretty long list of things that came out of the staff recommendations. If you guys wanna hear all of them again, he can read through them.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you, Commissioner Bragg. Yes, I do have, in the commissioner's packet, there are two memos, one from myself as the planning and zoning director, and also one from the city engineer, Brett Runge. And they're fairly extensive. They deal with wastewater and the solar array and water plans and, life safety issues. They deal with landscape plans. All of those things are included, to Sarah's question, one of my recommendations as a condition is that, for example, zoning code 23.44.008 requires that 1 tree per 50 foot of frontage or 1 tree per 6 parking stalls, whichever is greater, is required. So those are all in published ordinances, as well as in the city engineer's recommendation, he recommended screening using trees or fencing of some type be provided to mitigate glare from the solar array. Then there was discussion in his about traffic and infestation from pests or flies. There's, that's why he had a recommendation of the no waste or carcasses being allowed outside. Stormwater drainage is addressed in this memo. The industrial discharge permit is addressed in this memo. The recommendation, that all wastewater concerns are addressed to the city's satisfaction, and full approval of the industrial discharge is obtained with a revised site layout. The recommendation of 40,000 gallons per day flow and future treatment for the 300 head a day be adhered to. Again, it's being proposed as 150 head per day. Anything beyond that would have to have an updated wastewater discharge permit, as well as the maximum water demand of 40,000 gallons per day, as a condition of the permit. So this is an extensive list of requirements that we're recommending be placed on this applicant.
Rendering wasn't on that list?
What was it?
Rendering was not, that came from the hearing exam.
Yeah.
Just a second. Some more?
Yeah, no, so that was included in the commissioner's packet as conditions.
Okay, Mr. Freeman?
Am I correct, Barry, that every single one of those conditions could be altered, removed, or replaced if an applicant comes before the commission and says, we need some other condition on there, we need this one removed, we need this one changed?
That is correct. It would be up to this body to
So
decide.
none of them are binding
That's correct.
on even this same group a year from now.
That's correct.
So they're not really conditions at all, are they? Other than we get to come before this group and say, no, we really don't want a rendering plant there again.
Well, we would be setting a standard of what we are going to require be done, unless there's some unforeseen circumstance at which time you would be able to come
Sean,
speak
the
as
problem
well.
is, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we were told that exact same thing with the turkey plant 5 or 6 years ago, and it wasn't a year later than we were told, forget it, we're taking that off, they need the rendering plant because it's gonna save them some money. That's why we feel the way we do. These conditions mean nothing, because you guys, or a future commission, will change them. If somebody comes in and says, we're gonna pull out if you don't give us a rendering plan, and boom, we got another rendering plan right in our front yard.
Anyone else? Invitation's open. And yes, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, well, I just have a few things I'd like to ask of the group. What is your time frame? I know you have some time frame in there, and it's a little bit of a moving target as to when this is gonna be stand up and ready to go, operational.
Yeah, so our anticipation is total construction window is just a little bit over a year, from ground break. I think it's probably too aggressive to guarantee that ground break will happen yet this fall. And so, if you start to back into a spring construction timeline, then you're starting to talk about spring 2026 is probably a likely start date.
If I could, Commissioner, a couple caveats to that would be, just like any project of this size, there's gonna be an equity drive as well for local investors to invest into this facility. That would start immediately on approval if approved, which would, again, there's no timetable on how long that could take. There will be a goal of what we would raise, and the faster we can raise the money, the faster we can get rolling.
And I've been very clear, I think, with everybody up front talking about that equity raise, that the way we're doing this project is incredibly unique. The way most value-added ag facilities get done is you go out and find the investors, raise the money, and then try and ram it through on the permitting side. And Kyle and I are not believers in that. We very much believe on this project that the appropriate way to do it is to go through the permitting process. Make sure that everybody understands what that facility looks like, make sure that everybody understands that we're committed to the city of Huron, and that the city of Huron's committed to the project, and then go out and secure your final financing for the project. So that was a very intentional decision, not a decision that you see very often happen, but it was something that we've been committed to from the start, just because we did not want anyone to feel like there's a bait and switch in there.
That's a good point. Clint, if I could expand on that, he's exactly right, because we could have this chambers filled with a bunch of investors with their money sitting in escrow right now. It could be a very different conversation when money is tied in, so we wanted to come forward before you guys first to see if we have a fully fleshed out project before bringing it in front of folks.
Well, and I'm glad you elaborated on that, because that was part of my next question, of kind of where you're at on that, not wanting to know all the details, just the financial resources behind it. The other question that I had is, you're initially starting at 150 per day. What's the timeline to get to 300?
So to be totally clear from the start, there is no current timeline to get to the 300. I think if that decision got made in the future, the goal here was just to be fully open and transparent with everyone, that the facility wouldn't necessarily look any different, that the facility's been designed with the ability to go to that 300 if market resources dictated. This group has always been committed to the fact, though, that we're not going to turn into a massive processing facility in any given location, really because of the belief that a project like this has the ability to provide significant economic development to a smaller community. And if we reach that full capacity size, that it makes more sense to do best good and to be the right facility for the most producers, to actually build a second facility in a different location, rather than continue to expand the facility in the proposed location.
So would going from 150 a day to 300 in the same facility, that would suggest a night shift?
A second shift, yeah.
Or a second shift,
Yeah.
some hour. And I fully understand the traffic concern out in that part of the area. I've driven through there and witnessed a lot of close calls myself. The state highway, we don't have very little control of that. Even Custer Avenue is not technically the city's. And that, I think, was elaborated on before as to where some of that conversation has come from regarding Custer Avenue and rebuilding it or redoing it. At this level, we can't predict what that outcome is going to be or when it's going to happen. But I am a proponent, regardless of whether this plant comes along Custer Avenue or not, I am a proponent of rebuilding at least part of Custer Avenue, because about the first mile north-south is technically within city limits. And it's become, just by attrition, that's become part of our responsibility too. So I know that doesn't have necessarily anything to do with their application, but I just want the audience to know that I'm a proponent of trying to get Custer Avenue to be a much safer road north-south for sure. The traffic concern, if this business was not coming in requesting a conditional use permit, and there was a business that was coming into Vantage Park that met all the qualifications, and maybe it was a distribution center or something that created a lot more traffic, there's nothing we could do about that. If they met all the requirements, building permit requirements and all those types of things, the traffic could be worse, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to minimize your concerns, but it's possible that that is something that could happen, and it may happen. We still have, Ted, what, 100 and some acres left in Vantage Park for development?
Right now, there's approximately 120 acres available. If they acquire this 20 approximately, we'd have about 100 left.
Can I ask Ted a question? I mean, I don't know if that's out of order to.
Oh.
I'm just, I mean, when you all bought that land, was that part of, and I know this isn't High Plains speak, but when you bought that land out there and decided to develop Vantage Park, was that part of your long-term plan? Like, I mean, if you were hoping to have businesses out there, what was the plan for the traffic? Because Custer Avenue's been terrible for a long time, like before you bought that land.
Sure.
So what was GHD's plan for that, I guess?
Certainly a partnership, city, county, possibly the state of South Dakota through some additional funds to make improvements, pardon me, to that road resulting from additional industry. We can't come off, I shouldn't say we can't come off of Highway 14. It's highly unlikely we would get a permit to come off of Highway 14 into that park. So Custer Avenue makes the most sense for access into that property.
And there's no way to use the Turkey Plant Road that is already, I mean, and I truly have no idea, so it might be a dumb question, but we already have a factory out there, and we have a road that goes to the Turkey plant. Is there, they already got that access point, why can't that work to go to High Plains Beef instead of Custer Avenue?
The access to the turkey plant itself is a mile east of Custer Avenue. The access to the turkey plant headquarters is on the half section line. I don't know if there's an opportunity to share an access point with them or not, but to have additional traffic, truck traffic, employee traffic, turning onto the highway at a half section line would be less ideal than having them a mile apart, where they're coming off of the turkey plant road, which is a mile east. I don't know exactly what road that is.
And the turkey plant owns all the land basically between the lagoons and the highway, so.
To
as far as-
access off of the turkey plant road from the east coming to the west into our property would be a half-mile of new road across land that isn't owned by the city, county, or Greater Huron. It's Dakota Provision.
So is that something the city you all take into account before you approve this? I mean, can you table it and talk to the county and get assurances that these things are actually happening rather than just some vague sort of, we're talking about doing it in a couple of years? I mean, again, we live there and we drive it all day long, every day, so.
And I respect that, Sarah, I really do. It's very similar, in my opinion. I don't travel it every day like you do. My kids don't travel it every day like your kids do. But it's a bit similar to West Park entrance. You know, that big open, but look at how many accidents we've had at West Park in comparison. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe there's been a request to have a stoplight at that intersection, and it has not happened. Again, that is a plea to the state. That is not a city determination.
Well, Becky, you mentioned in one of our calls when you reached out to me that you guys have approached the state before about Highway 14, and just by coincidence, Brad always happens to be in the right place at the right time.
The right place is the right word.
I was trying to keep him out of it, Brad.
Could you speak to, when was the last time that was evaluated? And again, no guarantees here, but the additional traffic, could you see that having an impact on that intersection?
I think it will be an impact. The last time it was checked was just before they put in the turn lanes. So it's been a number of years. We would ask for a traffic impact study, whether this went west or east, we would have asked for it at West Park too. To get that many turning trucks, the turn lanes probably aren't long enough, right turn lane. For eastbound, could take signals. Of course, Custer Avenue, probably need turn lanes. So, yeah, we'd probably ask for if it was approved, we'd ask for a traffic impact study to see what it's gonna take to redo that intersection.
And if the state deems that the intersection needs that kind of work, how far back would the state investment go? You know, you mentioned turn lanes on Custer. Would the state absorb some of that cost, or how far
It's
down Custer?
Not necessarily the state's cost either, it could be their cost, depending on how it's determined. If we have, like we've got a place over by Lake Preston that's looking at coming in, they need turn lanes based on the impact study, and they have to foot the bill 100%, the state doesn't pay any of it. So that could be the same thing with this.
And on the other side of town, that did come up, and I know you guys had talked about, you know, Old Highway 14 and some of that, you had talked about making an investment and improving some of those roads if needed. Would you say the same thing here if that determination was made?
Yeah, if I could, well, to that point, Commissioner, we really wouldn't have a choice. We wanna be here or not, we have to make those investments. And I would say this is very similar to a soybean plant project we're working on south of Mitchell. We located 2 miles south, and we had to extend the south and north turn lanes at like 1,000 feet. And DOT isn't covering that cost. The soybean plant is covering that cost because they're making the impact on the highway. There are, you know, it wasn't in the STIP for the state, so they're not coming in and planning it already, so that would be the project cost. So we would see that no different than this plan here.
And so you do have a unique, though, opportunity that I will say is as the county is redesigning Custer Avenue, or as they're going through that process, you have the opportunity to rethink a little bit about what configuration looks like, about what right-of-way looks like. And so what I would anticipate happening is that that's a joint discussion between the city, the county, the state, and us as well, to make sure that that infrastructure is in the right place and done the right way the first time, so that we're solving a long-standing issue rather than putting a Band-Aid on something and creating more problems later.
And that's a good point, Clint. If I could, the soybean plant's adding 450 trucks a day to Highway 37 during harvest. We're talking about 4 cattle pods, so it'd be a huge difference in how long, and I don't speak out of turn here, Brad, but it'd be a big difference of how long those turning lanes have to be. It'd be significantly shorter for this, I'm assuming, because you don't have trucks with puffs in the turning lane to turn off of 37 on the 257. So it is, again, speaking of apples to apples, it's hard, it's not a very good comparison, but it's similar in terms of how the money would flow.
I know Custer Avenue is narrow, whatever, bumpy, whatever you wanna call it. I live on that truck route too, so I don't see all your traffic, but you don't see all my traffic either, and I understand. I live on that same truck route, but it is a truck route. Instead of deterring them through right into downtown, which is not the most favorite thing for a truck driver to do, I get that. And that's why we have truck routes. I'm not saying they're perfect, that's for sure. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be rebuilt, I get that.
It definitely doesn't look like the rest of the truck route. I mean, it's.
What's that?
Custer Avenue where we're talking.
I know.
Is not maintained like the rest of the truck route.
That's what I was gonna say, I understand it needs to be rebuilt and whatever. The equipment, when that road was built, the equipment is so much different today than what it was when that was built. And if you don't keep up with the times.
Sorry. To Commissioner Smith's point, I mean, that is a separate issue from this
Right.
conditional use, because we have been in communication with the county prior to this project. We will, whether this project goes through or not. It doesn't change the fact that Custer Avenue is an area of impact. I mean, we know that that's a problem that needs to be addressed. So whether or not this project happens, either way, that is something that we have to work through with the county to address.
So who shares the cost of all of that road work? Do the beef people pay part of it, or is it all on the county and the city?
I think per what they just alluded to, if the study showed that their traffic would cause it, that they would be responsible for a portion of it.
All right.
One more thing, if I may.
Sure.
I'm just trying to.
Just made it.
Just trying to backtrack a little bit on some of the concerns that were brought forward. What is your, just to address the questions and concerns from the citizens, What is your anticipated hiring process? I think it's apparent that our unemployment is low, just like everybody else's, and that's in this day and age. Not sure where it's going to be in 2 years, but if all things are the same, what is your plan for workers?
So I think this is a struggle anytime you talk about economic development, is where that impact comes from. And so I think there's no question that as part of this, given the wages that's proposed in the project, that you'll see some in-migration of workers. Where those folks come from, if they're coming from a Sioux Falls metro area, if they're coming from Mitchell, if they're coming from surrounding areas, even if they're coming from processing in Alpena. I think you'll see in-migration that's happening into Huron. There's no way I can sit in front of you today and say that there's no transfer of employees between other businesses. It's not something that I think you can say. At the end of the day, I mean, a rising tide raises all ships, and if a competitive market rate is paid and an employee decides for the betterment of their family to switch employers, that's not something that I can control. What I can say is that we're committed to not just trading employees all over town. I don't think that's helpful to what you guys have going on in Huron. It's not helpful to our other businesses that we have. And so the hiring plan is not to just go out and just poach employees in general. And I think there's probably some folks in the crowd and some others that are at least generally aware that there is some consideration to doing a housing project associated with this within the community. That's still something that we're committed to as a group, because we understand that there are auxiliary concerns to a project of this size, and 50 new employees, you have to be committed to solving additional ancillary problems, and committed right now to saying that we're working hard on it.
Fair response. It's a hard question, and it's one that I guess we can't necessarily control through this process, but thank you for your transparency on it. There's a couple other things with the motion that I think we need to take another look at. I'd like to, one item is the tree portion of it. Look at what that concern is. You know, it states in here 1 tree for every 6 parking spots
That's
in
what
the
the ordinance says.
in the parking lot. But what does that allow for bordering?
I think the screen for the solar is what they are kind of referring to, and what I have in my notes, a solar screen would be trees or something along those lines for the solar plant portion of it.
So one thing, if I may, guys, one thing I'm gonna touch base on, we're committed to landscaping, we're committed to tree screening. One of the unique things though about this site that I'm trying to be cognizant of as we're talking about tree planting is that I don't create a snow issue for us along Custer Avenue, and that I don't create a snow issue on an existing neighbor. And so we're committed to going through that process. I'll have everybody in the crowd involved when we go through that process, but I need to be really careful so that we don't create a major drifting area through there and end up impacting road maintenance for all kinds of folks and business access for all kinds of folks on how those trees get laid out. And so that's my #1 biggest concern with tree planting. Not that we're not gonna work on it, but that we need to be very intentional on how we work through that planting.
Okay.
I think, some of the things I had noted is rigorous odor control, trees, landscaping, rendering done not in the community, which we've already discussed, tree screening, loading and unloading inside of the buildings. I assume the city planning office or engineer will want to sign off on building plans for this that looks similar to what we're getting shown on the screen, correct?
Oh, yes.
And Marby also talked about clear vision, you know, with Greater Huron not stating their vision here. I mean, we could be sitting in these seats for every one of these lots. Are we opening up floodgates for other things? Hogs?
So-
What's our vision for Vantage Park?
So as an industrial park, there's only certain things that can go into an industrial park, and those things are already listed in the ordinance. You know, we can certainly look at the ordinances and see if that aligns with what our vision for the community is, if there's things in there that we feel we need to move from there, or maybe add, but, I don't know if you wanna get specific on what industries we want to see or not want to see. But this is one that is currently listed for this, type of facility, or this, industrial park.
And Becky, and Sarah, not that it's east versus west, and I'm speaking completely for myself here, but my biggest concern with putting it on the west side was the 40,000 gallons of sewage running through Third Street out to the other side of town, where this is just a very short distance, was probably one of my bigger concerns in the process. So it's not an east versus west, but the facility is right next door to this, so.
Anytime another process,
Right, yeah,
processing,
but that was probably one of my
The east side is
biggest.
gonna be the perfect vantage park, is gonna be where it's gonna be, and I know, again, that's not your concern, but that's our concern.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
So I
I don't know if
Billy's
anybody really
question.
gets it if they don't live up there.
I have lived, I grew up over in that area. I know what it smells like when the wind blows a certain area. My grandparents and my parents developed River Ridge Avenue right there on the other side of the river. I lived out there. I know what it's like. I get it. I
The
do.
future use is what is
Mhm.
worrisome.
Right.
I mean, these guys seem great, I agree, I enjoy talking to them, but if Vantage Park has all these lots available, what is and the city commission should be in on that, what's the plan for it, what's the future development, so.
The
Like you
plan
like
is,
that.
it doesn't matter what the park is today, because all you have to do is come in and ask for a conditional use permit or a variance, and it gets changed.
Well, Rodney,
It
you've said
gets
that,
heard.
you've said that several times, Rodney, but I mean, I respect that you guys have been burned, but there is no other process. I mean, that is how, conditional use is not a Huron thing. This is not something that we made up. You know, this is the process that exists, and all we can do is work within the constraints that municipalities have. It's unfortunate that it didn't work well, you know, for you guys, but that doesn't mean that now anytime there's a conditional use, that it will always be a bad deal. You know, I think these guys are a strong partner, they've made a lot of commitments, and, you know, when you take Marvy's idea of a plan for the city, I mean, you guys highlighted it, you do already have sewage lagoons there, you do already have turkey processing plant there, you do already have rendering. If you were going to say it's gonna go anywhere, Sarah, you're right, probably if this type of thing comes, everyone is going to say, this is the part of town it should go, because that's already established. You had, the Armor Pork plant there, you have the solid waste plant there. That is the part of town likely where this type of thing will look. Now, at this time, there's nobody else looking to bring something like this, but, you know, it's fair to say, if this is going to go anywhere, this would be the right place for it if you were going to make a strategic plan for the city.
Well, then why don't
On
you just
the
go
other
ahead and
hand-
do it so people don't have to ask for a conditional use permit? Why don't you just say dump everything out there and get over with it?
Or
Oh,
have a
that's-
strategic
that's-
plan that says, these are the type of businesses we want, and go look for them. Don't just wait for somebody to knock on our door and say, hey, Huron's not the dumping ground, okay? We have certain standards as a community. Lay those out. Get community input. There should have been a design for Custer long before these guys showed up in town. So, as a commission, if you're in charge of our community, get a plan. So this kind of thing does not happen. And if you want this town to be a meatpacking town, then say it. And that's what we'll have.
Anybody, we're gonna wrap this up here, guys.
Mr.
So-
Mayor, can I just address
Commissioner Harvey's one thing that he laid out as a condition. So we're totally comfortable as well of adding a condition that there'll be charcoal filtration to the air exhaust. That's still in the design phase. I'll be totally honest, designing odor reduction is tough. And so I'll say that just from the ag engineering is that odor is a very subjective thing. And it's really hard to design to from an engineering perspective. I'm just talking as a licensed engineer. From an engineering perspective, it's very hard to guarantee a certain amount of odor reduction because odor is a subjective measure. It's not like a particulate. It's very, very dependent. But we are committed to the fact, and we'll add as a condition that our building permit request will have carbon filtration as part of the exhaust air. If you guys are.
We were told we were gonna have scrubbers on that turkey plant too, and we don't know if they use them or if they work or anything about it, or that processing plant.
Building inspector.
Well, we just hope that,
One thing, please, quick.
oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing
Yeah,
that has changed.
ma'am, could you come on up?
Here at Custer Avenue.
Need your name and address?
Erica Chase and I, we live at 817 Custer Avenue. And one thing that has changed just since the 10 years that we have lived out there, there's a place of worship out there now that there has not been in years. And they worship all day on Saturday, all day on Sunday. I'm assuming it's gonna be a 24/7,
No.
5 days a week?
Yep.
Okay, but there are little children, and they are out there in the lawns all day long, all the time. So that has changed since this was bought by the city or whatever. That's new. And I can't help but think that if a beef plant was gonna come within a block of my church, that this whole place wouldn't be packed. But it's a church of minority, and I'm afraid they're getting overlooked. Somebody said Hispanic, I don't wanna say they're Korean,
I think they've been.
I don't know.
They've been instructed.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been instructed that it's coming there, yeah.
Right, but do they understand? I don't know, and I don't want to diminish,
Yeah,
but I can't imagine that if a church, your church or my church,
They knew when they requested the variance to go there, they knew that they were in
it was a
an industrial
possibility.
park.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
And I was the representative for them through that
Sure.
transaction,
Sure,
so, yeah.
so they knew
Yeah.
that there was a possibility. Okay,
But they knew what the area was, for sure, yes. Yeah.
sure, well, I sure hope they really understand.
I get what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Erica,
Thank you, Eric.
before you leave the podium, your last name, please?
Chase.
Chase, thank you.
Thank you, Erica, and so,
Let's go back to the motion.
Yeah.
And make sure that we all, are on the same page of what, your recommendations are. We have, so the motion that I made was for the recommendations that were, put in the packet. I don't know if any of the other commissioners thought there needed to be something further than what was already notated in the recommendation from city staff.
I think we had everything on my list in there. I'm pretty sure, did we, and I know we need approved drawings, so I think that's just a commonality, correct? So,
I think the two things that came up were if we wanted to do a more restrictive landscaping plan, and then we just needed to amend the hearing examiner's recommendation of 50 miles, we can't implement that, but, so we would need to amend how that's worded.
I don't see.
Sean, was there anything?
I think that's what I had on my list.
you have the motion written.
How about that covenant
Oh.
for no rendering on Vantage Park? When does that take place?
Right.
That would be me as a separate issue with Greater Huron Development Corporation. Absolutely willing to make that condition of that property that we have.
When will that take place? And do we have to come to you and say, would you please do it, or are you just going to take care of it?
Just asked, I will take care of it and
just
bring that to
asking.
my board at our next board meeting.
This is just.
And we'll just have that as an excluded use within that.
You can add that as a covenant on the property as well. It's in the
Yes, that would
city's
be,
name.
a restrictive covenant on that property.
But they're asking for that to be, so that would be part of the conditional use is that
We had a covenant.
add a covenant to the property.
Are we able to do that?
We would do that because the land is in the city's
Right.
name at this point.
You can do that before the transfer of the property.
Are you clear and
Yep.
okay with your motion?
Yes, so I would like to make, that motion with a, recommendation from our city staff, as well as putting in there that we put in the covenant that we, the land that the city owns for Vantage Park would be, no rendering plants be, the use of those. Yes.
And who seconded that motion?
I seconded that.
Are you over there?
Stay
Who
with
seconded?
Do we have charcoal filters in there too? Sorry, I'm a little after the game here. but
Nope.
Trying to keep track of my notes.
That odor
Odor
control.
control is in the
Is in
recommendation.
Okay.
the city
Thank you.
engineer's recommendation, and that
Let
would
me,
fall under that.
let me see if that's, I will add that
I think we should
charcoal
specify.
filtration, filtration to the motion.
Okay, okay.
And I think the only other thing that we talked about was an enhanced
Landscape.
landscaping plan.
And that is included in there.
Yeah, I mean,
Unless we
you have to
change
be
the ordinance.
specific in what you,
Yeah, what do
you know, what do you want?
Maybe what we could
Um,
do is that they present
A
present.
landscaping plan is required.
Presented prior to
Prior
construction
to,
starting.
yes.
Okay.
We can approve that.
That's
Are
fine.
we all right, Councilman, or are we legal on that? Adding this? Are we good for adding this to his motion?
So you want, is that remaking that motion?
Correct.
Yeah, he's restating.
Yeah, restating my motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a second?
Yes, we
I
do.
seconded it.
Okay.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're on the up with that.
Thanks.
Everybody's clear on the motion and the second? A roll call vote, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Weinrice,
Aye.
Bragg,
Aye.
Harvey,
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Thank you for that. I want to say one comment before everybody leaves. I appreciate everybody coming. High premium beef, and I'm just gonna call you opposition, so I'm sorry, but I appreciate you coming and hearing, you didn't just come and blow it in the wind. We heard it. We heard it, and we understand the concerns. We're not trying to bring any dumping ground businesses to town. That's not our objective. That will never be our objective. This commission or the future commission. I will say that. That's not our objective. And I'm gonna go out and say that will not be their objective.
Mayor, can I just add to that, that we, sitting here, all want the very best for the community. And there's a lot of ins and outs to that, and a lot of variables that we have to consider in this. And Marvy, I hear what you're saying, and if you'd like to discuss it sometime, we can certainly do so. But everybody here sits on 2.0 Rising, they do different things in this community, and we are all trying to work together as a cohesive unit to make it the best place to live.
All right, the Board of Adjustments adjourns to reconvene as the city commission. We will do the consent agenda. Matters appearing on the consent agenda are expected to be non-controversial and will be acted upon by the city commission at one time without discussion unless a member of the commission requests an opportunity to address any given item. Items removed from the consent agenda will be discussed at the beginning of the formal items. The consent agenda consists of 6.1 minutes of the May 13th, 2024 meeting. 6.2 fuel quotes for the city departments. 6.3 proclamation Poppy Days, May 25 through and 24 of 2024. And we don't have them here tonight. We made this proclamation here last week, I guess, to them, so we appreciate that. 6.4 raffle, HCVB SD Barbecue Championship for June 7 and 8, 2024 at the South Dakota State Fairgrounds. 6.5, special event on sale, alcoholic beverage license filed by Top Floor Events for a chamber mixer on June 11 at Splash Central Park, 345 9th Street Southwest. 6.6, set June 3 as a public hearing to consider first reading of ordinance 2261-23-414 pertaining to the manufacturing of mobile modular homes. 6.7, set June 3 as a public hearing to consider ComNet cellular Verizon lease. 6.8, seasonal hiring recommendations for Parks and Recreation and Splash Central. 6.9, payment of the bills. I would entertain a motion for
Move
the...
to approve.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. 7.1, bid quote items. Consider change order number 1 by BX Civil and Construction for bid number 2024-01 Dakota Avenue Improvement Project for a decrease of $90,812.50. Engineer Runge, please.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is the deduct that we had discussed last week during the work session. Basically, this is to change the soil mix bid item that's on the project right now for topsoil. And yeah, that deduct is looked at as $90,812.50. We recommend, we've actually ran this through with DOT, and they have approved it from their side of things. We recommend approval.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. 7.2, consider a request to bid, authorize addendums to, as deemed necessary by the city engineer and set the bid opening for 2 p.m. on June 4th, 2024 for the project of the 2024-15 salt storage shed. Engineer Runge.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So the engineering department, with the assistance of Randy Hoshide with Pearson Harris, we needed some structural support on this. Put together plan specifications for this salt storage shed, excuse me. The shed is a 60-foot by 60-foot wood frame shed with steel siding, and then it'll have a concrete foundation wall. And it's to replace the salt shed that the street department lost in 2022, excuse me. Where there was an insurance claim on that, 30,000-ish or so.
It ended up being like 126,000 in the end.
Oh, really? Okay. So.
Now I'm going.
Even better, we got more money for this. All right, but at any rate, we've budgeted $255,000 for the salt storage shed. It's going to be located at the Public Works building site. We recommended proceeding with the bid.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Harvey.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinreich.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. Petitions and communications. Accept the quitclaim deed from Greater Huron Development Corporation transferring lot 1, block 1, Sankum to the city of Huron. City Planner Barry Cranston.
Yes. On the board, you can see the location. This is a problem we've been trying to resolve for a number of months now. In 2019, a plat was drawn by IMEG Engineering for Greater Huron that had an error in it, and we discovered the error later. This particular parcel consists of 2 lots that were included in that plat and noted as Greater Huron's being under Greater Huron's ownership. And they were not. They were actually owned by Sancom. In your packet, you'll see 2 different copies. One is the plat of the Southtown area. that had those lots on it, and then also the Sancom plat that showed that the lots were actually owned by Santel Communications or Sancom at the time. In order to resolve that ownership issue, Greater Huron swapped a parcel of ground up in the Broadland Creek Business Park with Sancom, and Sancom then swapped, under ATV Holdings, they have now swapped that parcel back to Greater Huron, and now Greater Huron is bringing that to the city of Huron to consolidate the ownership under the proper jurisdiction, so that going forward, everything will be under the correct ownership.
Good explanation.
It's taken a while to
It's-
iron it out.
It's been a long time.
Move to approve the request.
Second.
Second, any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinrice.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. 8.2, consider 2024 irrigation contract with the Huron Country Club and authorize the mayor to sign. Commissioner Bragg, would you want to elaborate on this?
Sure, this is our annual contract with the country club. They did ask for a little more clarification on exactly what the basis was, and primarily what we showed them is that there is over 8,000 linear feet of PVC pipe that runs all the way underneath past James Valley School, all the way out to the airport at the former hangar, and then, or the former terminal, then going up past Owens, and so the cost to initially put that infrastructure in, the cost to maintain that infrastructure, and also what would ultimately be replacement when that reaches end of life, is the primary piece that is the basis for the fee that the country club pays. After going through and seeing everything involved, they were comfortable and did submit and re-sign. Not that anyone's ever happy about paying a bill, but they did understand the justification.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Bragg. Is that a motion?
I would move that we accept their contract, I guess.
Okay,
Second.
second by Harvey. Any other questions?
I just, one
Yes.
point of notice here is they have the previous mayor's name on the bottom part, which I think it would have been, usually was handled prior to May, the
We
first
made the
beginning.
change on the
Oh.
signed copy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they
Anything
took a little-
else?
They took a little while to review this before they accepted it.
Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinrice.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Aaronson. Or,
Yeah. I'm sure he's gonna have. Just a minute, let me get him on the phone here.
exactly.
That was distracting there.
Yeah.
Thinking about that name on the contract.
Aye. I'll go for it too. All right. Departmental items. Consider memorandum of understanding with the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 3A. City Attorney Tucker Waleski, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The Fraternal Order of Police, they have requested an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement with respect to night pay. They requested a change so that anytime an officer is working between 7 AM or 7 PM or 7 AM, they're entitled to the night pay.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's been any objection to it from HR. Chief of Police is here also if there are any questions.
I'd entertain a motion first.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any question for anybody? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Weinrice.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Mayor Robish.
Aye. All right, we're gonna move into a work session now. Goes into